They thought the devil lived in her house. That's what people whispered when they saw the videos. Chairs flying across the floor, phones yanked from the wall, lamps crashing to the ground without anyone touching them. In 1984, a quiet neighborhood in Columbus, Ohio, became the epicenter of what many believed was a full-blown haunting. At the center of it all was a 14-year-old girl with sad eyes, a quiet voice, and a string of bruises no one wanted to explain. Her name was Tina Resch. The news called her the Poltergeist girl. Parapsychologists called it a rare, possibly real case of violent psychokinetic energy. And skeptics, of course, called it fake. But the thing is, whether you believed the haunting was real or not, what happened to Tina after the cameras stopped rolling was much worse than anything they captured on tape. Because years later, when her name resurfaced in the headlines, it wasn't about ghosts. It was about a murder. This is the true story of Tina Resch, the girl who cried Poltergeist, and the woman who died in prison. Tina Resch wasn't supposed to be famous, and she definitely wasn't supposed to be haunted. Born Christina Boyer in 1969, she came into the world unwanted. Her birth parents, young, unprepared, and in the middle of personal chaos, gave her up before she could even form words. She was adopted as a toddler by Joan and John Resch, a devout Christian couple in Ohio who had already fostered more than 200 children over the years. On paper, the Resch home was a safe place, structured, God-fearing, loving. But that's not what Tina remembers. She described her upbringing as cold, emotionally distant. She was told what to do, when to do it, and who to be. The Resches expected obedience, faith, and gratitude. Tina was messy, curious, angry. As she entered her teenage years, the tension only grew. Then came the incident that changed everything. On March 10, 1984, police were dispatched to the Resch home. The call had come from Tina, who was frantic and nearly unintelligible on the line. Officers arrived to find a teenager shaking with fear. According to the family and Tina herself, objects had begun moving on their own, furniture tipping, pictures falling, lights flickering, phones yanked from the wall. At first, the police were skeptical, until one of them claimed to see a lamp lift off the table and fall to the floor without anyone touching it. That was enough to trigger a second visit, this time with local reporters. The Columbus Dispatch sent photographer Fred Shannon, who arrived with little expectation of capturing anything useful. But what he witnessed, and what he caught on film, set off a national firestorm. In one now infamous photo, Tina is seated on a living room couch, clearly frightened. Behind her, a telephone is midair, frozen in motion. No wires, no hands, just a flying phone. The paper ran the image with a headline that caught fire. Poltergeist? Suddenly, Tina Resch was the center of a storm she couldn't control. News vans parked outside the house for days. Journalists flooded the lawn. Psychics showed up uninvited, offering to cleanse the energy. A crew from ABC's 2020 flew in. Paranormal researchers from across the country reached out. Even famed skeptic James Randi took notice. The haunting, if that's what it was, seemed focused solely on Tina. Objects moved only when she was around. She said she could feel the energy rising before it happened. Sometimes it made her head hurt. Sometimes her hands went numb. Sometimes it felt like the house itself was trying to punish her. Parapsychologists offered theories: repressed rage, telekinetic energy, adolescent psychic trauma. Some suggested that Tina might be manifesting the disturbances subconsciously, driven by unresolved emotional wounds. Others believed it was all staged. Then came the tapes. A camera crew from WBNS-TV set up shop in the Resch home, hoping to capture something undeniable. And they did, sort of. In one clip, a lamp appears to fall from a table while Tina is alone in the room. In another, a phone cord snaps tight just before the receiver flies free. But when the footage was slowed down and examined frame by frame, you could see Tina's arm twitch. You could catch a moment when her hand, just out of view, might have nudged the object. That's all the skeptics needed. Suddenly, the story changed. Tina wasn't a victim. She was a manipulator, a troubled teen with a flair for the dramatic. Even Fred Shannon, the photographer whose photo had launched the whole media frenzy, began to back away from his claims. Tina insisted she hadn't faked anything. Not on purpose. She admitted to helping objects fall once or twice, just to make people believe her, but only because she said things had been happening before, only because no one listened unless something broke. It didn't matter. The press turned, so did the public, and so did her parents. Joan and John Resch, once proud to show off the attention their daughter had brought, now claimed she was dangerous. The incidents, they said, were hurting their family, their reputation. Tina was sent away, first to a psychiatric hospital, then to juvenile detention. She never returned to the house. From that point on, Tina Resch was on her own. She drifted for years, through group homes, shelters, jobs that didn't last. She reclaimed her birth name, Christina Boyer, and tried to outrun the past. In time, she moved to Georgia. She had a child, a little girl named Amber, and for a moment, she believed she might finally have something like peace. That moment didn't last. In April 1992, Christina's life shattered. According to her account, she left Amber in the care of her then-boyfriend, David Heron, while she went to work. When she returned, the child was unresponsive, bruised, bleeding. She called 911. Paramedics rushed the little girl to the hospital. She never woke up. The coroner's report was damning: severe head trauma, blunt force injuries, evidence of previous abuse. Christina insisted she had nothing to do with it, that David had been alone with Amber, that she didn't know, that she would never have hurt her daughter. But the police weren't buying it. They arrested her for murder. The trial was a media event in Georgia. It wasn't long before the headlines reappeared: Poltergeist girl charged with killing her child. Reporters rehashed her past, calling her unstable, manipulative, disturbed. Prosecutors leaned into that image. They claimed she'd lied about the haunting as a teenager, and she was lying now. David Heron, under pressure, confessed to abusing Amber, but he claimed Christina knew, that she helped cover it up. Faced with the death penalty, Christina took a plea deal: life in prison. David served 14 years. She's still behind bars today. In the decades since, her case has been revisited by documentarians, podcasters, activists, even Innocence Projects. Some argue that the system failed her, that she was a traumatized girl who never got help, punished for a story people never forgave her for. Others say the signs were always there, that her manipulations didn't stop with flying phones. But the truth is this: the girl who once claimed to be haunted ended up living a life that most would call cursed. Whether you believe the objects moved on their own, or she moved them to be seen. Tina Resch's story ends the same way. Not with a ghost, but with silence. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.